Good afternoon and welcome to Welcome Home. Here we are once again, Garden Plaza of Valley View. Kevin Miller with you on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Joining us now, attorney at law Mark White. Mark, good to have you with us.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thank you.
You know, certainly it's Saturday afternoon. We're having a good time. When people think of, going to a senior center, we always, have these, negative connotations. One of the reasons why we're here at Welcome Home is obviously to find out the good things going on. Why are you here? What do you do with the folks here at Garden Plaza?
Well, over the last 10 years, 3 or 4 times, me and my old man band have been here.
Old man band?
Our old man band, yeah. There's 3 of us usually and maybe a 4th, and we come and play music from the 50s, 60s, and since I'm the youngest, I do the ones from the 70s.
Sure.
But it's one of the activities they have here, and we get a pretty good turnout. I remember one year we came, and there's a gentleman sitting on the front row, and he'd started drumming in 1920-something. He was not a young man, but he was so excited. He came and he sat right up front, and then he asked if he could sit down and play the trap set, and we said, sure, why not? He had a blast.
That might be a little intimidating for someone who's played the drums that long.
Yeah, it can be. You're sitting there going, hey, this guy's a real musician. And he played his whole life and, been a professional musician, at least a good chunk of that. But that was a lot of fun because then we could connect with him.
So back to the band.
Oh.
We hear so much, and it's been a while since we've had the staff on, but of the activity. So that's just one of the ways you could break that stereotype.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so we call ourselves the Remarkables because it's kind of remarkable that we still get out and play a little bit. I am the youngest member of the old man group. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, not only are you an attorney, but you've written this book, 5 Steps to Get Organized and Take Care of Your Family. Boy, that's easier said than done.
Yeah. Well, the concept was, as I visit with people, as I have visited with people over the years, there seems to be some concepts that, and I'm going to be a little sexist here for a minute, men especially don't kind of grasp, and that is, we're going to get old, we're going to be incapacitated at some point, we're going to need a little help, and then we die. No one gets off the rock alive, and so I'm always advocating to get real. Let's really get real because it's difficult for some people to go and contemplate the fact that, this is going to happen to them. And the short answer is, it is. It's going to happen. And I think you had Paul Orlando on last week, and he was talking about, listen, think about it, get organized, try to come up with a plan. And my book covers the fact that you got one, whether you actually sat down and wrote it, put it together or not. And in our experience, most people don't like the plan they have by not doing anything. That we call that the government plan. And Paul talked about Medicaid. That's one of the government plans. If you haven't put together a will or a trust, then probate code covers that and tells us what's going to happen if you die. If you become incapacitated and you haven't taken the time to put together a trust or a power of attorney or healthcare power of attorney, then we're going to go back over to the court and we're going to follow the government's plan instead of you taking control and making those decisions while you still can. So, yeah, it's you got to have a plan, but the short answer is you got one. You might want to know what that government plan is because most people don't like it. It doesn't fit their situation.
Well, and here we are, Garden Plaza of Valley View. Welcome home. Idaho Estate Planning. Mark White joining us. His number, 939-7658. So let's take a look at just some of the things you talked about. What happens if you don't have a will? What happens if you don't have a trust, specifically will, because that's scary for a lot of folks. It's hard to believe that many people don't have wills.
Oh, yeah. Some statistics show somewhere between 30 and 40% of the general population actually have a written plan, which means the vast majority don't. And that, again, kind of fits in with that concept of I don't want to think about it. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And so let's look at what that means. And so for, let's say, a married couple, and let's say it's a second marriage, it's a blended family, that's more and more common. And so if you have no will and you pass away, then all of your assets, your community assets, will go to your present wife. Which most people say, well, that's exactly what I want. I say, well, that's great. What if your second spouse passes away? Where do the assets go? To her kids, not to your kids. You have now eliminated, or pretermitted is, of course, the term that the lawyers use.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to use that.
Yeah, we get paid more if we use language like that. So omitted is probably the better word, but we've cut off our own kids and we've given all of our assets to stepkids.
To Sally's kids.
Yeah, and almost every time that I've been through that situation, it didn't go down very well. Someone was not very happy.
For Sally's kids, not for Stacy's kids.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Sally's kids.
Well, so one of the things that happens, which is really interesting, is let's say you've got a farm or a business.
Right.
And you and your kids have been working that, you're married to the new spouse, but you and your kids have been working it. And you die, nothing in place. Who inherits all of that? The present wife, Sally. And then when she dies, do your kids now get it back? No, they've been cut out completely. Not what you anticipated, not what you were thinking about, certainly not what they were anticipating. So that's the plan you get if you don't make a plan, if you don't take the bull by the horns.
Well, getting back to homes, though, so even though you're married and maybe your wife or your husband isn't on that home because it's a second marriage and maybe one person moves in, does that automatically go to probate? Or because that person has been there and had occupancy? And, how does that work?
No. And in fact, something to keep in mind, we get a lot of people that are confused about this. The presence of a will in and of itself doesn't mean that we won't go to probate. We will still probate the will. And so even though somebody's been living there, it's a remarriage situation, a blended family, and if he's kept it in his name that whole time, she might have a claim to part of it, but we're going to go to probate to figure out if she gets half of that or not. If it's separate, if the judge rules that it's separate property, then she'll share half of that with the kids while she's still alive. So Sally and his kids get to share the house together. That can be a really difficult situation. Seen that recently.
Well, and that's one of the issues that people deal with here. Hopefully they don't, at Garden Plaza Valley View. Mark White joining us, attorney, Idaho State Planning. His number 939-7658. If you want to call our friends at Garden Plaza, 322-0311. Okay, so, Counselor, how do we avoid the legal system? Your business, Idaho State Planning, how do we properly plan when we're just for a home?
Oh, well, a couple of things to keep in mind. If you really want to take care of your new spouse,
or the old spouse,
or if there's something that needs to go backwards,
or assuming maybe you stay together.
Oh yeah. So this is the only marriage, and the two people have.
Because ideally, that's what you plan for.
That's what most people plan for.
Yes, they don't really plan for 2 or 3 or
correct.
Whatever. Right.
So the suggestion then is, if you do remarry, review your plan, make sure it's what you want it to be.
Or do a Dun & Bradstreet or due diligence.
Yeah.
I'd say for both parties.
Could be.
Right.
Could be. So, so if it's, the original marriage and they're getting up in years, and so how do we plan? Well, let's sit down and think about that. Do you want to do the probate? Most people don't want their kids to go through the probate. Most of them would just as soon, not. Well, a will force you into the probate. Recently, though, we had a
Is that
change.
a cost?
Probate?
Right.
Yeah, I did. I sat down last fall and called a bunch of my compatriots that do probate work, and the average cost just to get started was $3,500. And then there was a lot of paperwork after that they will charge for, and then if they close it, so you could be into that, $7,000, $7,500, pretty easy. Doesn't take long to get there.
Sure.
So a trust allows you to avoid the probate because we've now taken your name off of it personally, and it's owned by the trustee of the trust. And so if we want a successor trustee to step in, we just put it in the instructions in the trust, and then they step in. They now can sign the documents to dispose of the house, however we want to do that. For example, if that's our major asset and we want to move someplace where we're getting a little bit more care.
Which is, for most people, that's their major asset, right?
Correct. It really is. And so a situation like Valley View here, a lot of activities, a lot of socialization. I've come and done presentations, and they couldn't interrupt their card game long enough to come listen to me. So always
Tough crowd.
Yes, it is, but always something going on. And you'll notice right here in the dining room how they talk to each other. That they've got you've got your people that sit together very often, but they check on each other too. So you didn't make it down for breakfast? We noticed that. So do we need to go check on you? That's a question to ask, but somebody's paying very close attention, which you don't normally get at home, especially if you're there by yourself. And I've also noticed a lot of people think that sitting and watching CNN on the big screen TV at home is an activity. Well,
for me it is.
Yeah, well, for them it's not.
For me, they call that work.
Well, some people can get away with that.
More coming up here. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Welcome home, Garden Plaza of Valley View. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Welcome home from Garden Plaza of Valley View. Kevin Miller with you. Hope you're having a great day. Our number here, 322-0311, 322-0311. Our guest, Mark White, joining us. I bet that happens a lot. We want to give you the Mark Wright.
A lot. So you were kind of concerned when I explained it to you a little more carefully when I introduced myself. There's so many ways you can spell a last name wrong, and White does that all the time.
He is from Idaho Estate Planning, idahoestateplanning.com. His number, 939-7658, 939-7658. That's a big title there. It's self-explanatory, Idaho Estate Planning.
Well, you're not going to believe this, but a number of years ago we thought, well, what if they knew what we did just by the title of the firm? And so that's what we've been doing ever since. And a lot of people, this is interesting, a lot of people don't quite know what estate planning means because they go, when you talk to them and they go, I don't know what an estate is, and they're thinking like Gone with the Wind, and was it Tara? Was that the name of the estate? And
just remember, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. And
yeah.
People in the South booing when they mentioned Sherman.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyhow, you got the big drive, and you got the big yard, and that's what everybody thinks of an estate. In the probate code, your estate is the stuff you own at your death. So I thought about just calling it stuff planning, but then even fewer people would get what we're talking about. But if I said, we're just planning on how your stuff takes care of you now and how we're going to divide it after you're gone,
right?
Then they go, oh, yeah, got it. That's what we're doing. Still difficult for them, but...
how has your business changed? Considering so many people moving into the Treasure Valley, has that impacted you? We hear about the homes, we hear about the roads, we talk about it a lot. Has that impacted you?
Oh, yeah. We see quite a few of the folks that move here because one of the things that they want to do, and I recommend that they do it, is review their estate planning or whatever they have in planning, whether it's financial or estate, and make sure that it complies with Idaho law so that whatever they thought they were doing before is still going to happen while they're here.
You get a lot of folks from California?
California's a big draw up here to the Treasure Valley. I had lunch yesterday with an attorney from Southern California, and we were talking about that. I said, I wonder, do people kind of feel that Idaho, especially the Treasure Valley, is what they grew up in, the type of community they grew up in California 30, 40, 50 years ago? And he goes, yeah, it has that same feel. And so they feel very comfortable coming here to the valley. and they bring some assets because you can sell a home in California for a lot of money.
Well, and not as much money, but recently you can sell or buy a home for a lot of money. The costs have gone up, which is good if you're considering maybe people you deal with, Mark, that they're selling their homes.
Selling, yeah.
And it's time to find a place to live, and why not Garden Plaza?
Yeah. Well, the question there that I ask, or at least this is the concept that I have for them is, especially when they're in that 4,500 square foot home, and it's mom and she's all by herself. That's a lot of work to take care of.
Second floor, maybe.
Oh my goodness. And they haven't gone through and really made that home a place where older people can live. There's some challenges. I recommend all the time that they look at situations where they can have activities, they can have socialization, they got somebody maybe keeping an eye on them, and living at home and using the TV for your socialization or your activities, not going to cut it. I found that most folks, especially here at Valley View, if they can come, spend a little bit of time, see what's going on, find it's not what they thought it was. Here's what I hear all the time. Well, Mom promised us never to take her to a nursing home. Well, nursing homes really don't exist so much the way we thought of them.
Right, they call it the home, and then we have that negative connotation. This is a world that you live in all the time, Mark, so how is Garden Plaza and other places, but particularly Garden Plaza, different from that stereotype, sir?
Well, first of all, if you come here and you're independent living, then this is not skilled nursing by any means. You're still on your own. You're still in charge. You get to make decisions. If it's time to maybe give up driving the car around all the traffic that we have now in the valley, that's taken care of here for you. You can make arrangements. They got a bus that they can take you to many places, and you can probably make arrangements to get to anywhere you need to, but you need to plan a little better maybe than you did at home when you went out and you got in the car. But I noticed with my folks, as they got a little older and they insisted on driving, They remodeled the car almost every time I dropped in to visit. There was a new scratch, a new dent.
Well, the great thing about Garden Plaza is you don't have to worry about parking, which has become a hassle.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that no matter where you park, somebody will pull up next to you, and they usually don't give you enough room to get out. And, Mark, with guys like us and gals like us, miles on the odometer, it doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, no. And, recently my mom in Utah moved into a independent living situation, and she was steadfast on hanging on to the car. You know what the first thing she gave up was when she moved into assisted living or into independent living? She gave up the car. Hasn't missed it at all. Here she thought, well, this is my last bastion of freedom and my independence, so I'm hanging on to the car. We got a place to park it and all that. Within a couple of weeks, she realized she didn't really want to drive anymore, and that was something that was taken care of for her. So, again, that's something that you need to look at and pay attention to. Yes, I got to hang on to my car. I've seen so many of them that don't get driven after a month or two. Especially here. There's so many activities. There's so much going on.
Sure, and we'll get to that, but isn't it funny, the attachments we have for things?
Yeah.
And, you've had to deal with this personally with your mom, but with your mom or your clients, the idea of leaving a space that you've owned, controlled, and then to go to a place like Garden Plaza of Valley View, which there aren't any, and that's why we're here, but that idea of trust. Can you share with me the idea of trust?
Well, the concept is simply, do I believe that I will be okay if I move to a new place? Well, moving is always, traumatic. That's a lot of work and a lot of thought goes into that.
Regardless of your age.
Doesn't matter. We moved a couple of years back, and that was the first time in 27 years that we'd moved, and I think we're going to try to hang on for another 27 because you don't like to move. There's another thought that you got to go through, and that is you're sitting in your 4,500 square foot home, And it's going to not be so big here at Valley View. You're going to have a nice apartment. It's not going to be that big. So you do have to make some decisions about what you bring over and what you don't bring over.
Sure. I guess the idea of decluttering, but back to your point, it's fascinating to me that people that move. I had a gentleman I know, his name's Kevin. He moved from one house to about 3 or 4 miles down. Now maybe newer home, what have you, but it's such a pain, and it's accentuated so much when you're older. You know, the idea of trust. So for people listening in, if we don't have enough time in this segment, Mark, how do you determine the right place for you, for mom, for dad, for whomever? You do this all the time. Are there warning signs that we should look for, or signs that the staff knows what they're doing? Because in the end, they'll be spending time with mom, dad, or whomever more than we will.
Yeah, I think the very first step for most people is to simply get out of the house and go visit a place. Because if they still have in their head that old notion, because it is a very old notion of of a nursing home, then the first thing they need to do is get out, come down here to Garden Plaza, Valley View, and take a look at what's here. You'll find that it is not a nursing home, that it is a very bright, well-appointed building. The apartments are very nice. So it is not that old, nursing home. And then I would suggest having lunch. Stay, have lunch, invite yourself. They'll let you come in and have some lunch. Sit down, watch everybody talking. Look at what's going on as far as the social activity. With Mom, we bought her a week.
And we're going to hold that thought. More coming up with Mark White, attorney, Idaho Estate Planning. You're listening to Welcome Home with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO Talk Radio, welcome home. We are here at Garden Plaza of Valley View. Their number 322-0311 if you have a question. Mark White joining us, attorney at law, Idaho Estate Planning. IdahoEstatePlanning.com is number 939-7658. So we were talking about what you did with your mom to get her used to getting out of her home, her castle. You bought her a week. What was that like? Or you're giving us suggestions on finding the right fit.
Well, at least starting to think about this place in your life. She lived alone at home, and she was very proud of that, except it had stairs. After the third time she'd fallen and needed help getting back up, the kids were all very concerned about this. So we had an opportunity. We put money down. We got a week's worth at an independent living situation. She quite enjoyed it. It was way different than she had anticipated.
And what was her reaction? I don't want to leave?
She was ready to leave because she had some stuff to get taken care of back at the house. But, one of the things that really happened is she got to look at what she could have there and what she didn't need to bring. And one thing I thought was just fantastic that she told me, because, we'd mentioned the fact that they do the cooking, and she goes, yeah, and they do the grocery shopping, and then they take care of the leftovers. These are all things that she'd been doing for herself, by herself, and she thought through that and went, that's okay. I like that. So after a week, she was ready to go home, but within 2 months, she was back. She moved in. She got a chance to meet the people there, and she really enjoyed the fact that she was talking with people her own age on an ongoing basis. Come down for breakfast, and she was visiting with people that quickly became friends. And that was down in Utah. This is one of the places I was hoping to bring her, except I have more siblings down there than we do up here in Boise, so that's where she ended up. More of her grandkids, too, live down there than here, which brings up another point for a lot of people is, you're not going to rely solely on the folks here at Valley View. If you've got kids and grandkids, they're going to come visit. And I promise you they will. There'll be that one son that you maybe have a little issue with, but just call him up. He'll come out and visit.
There's always one. So those are some of the things. But, Mark, we have a lot of new places moving in. And, the great thing about Garden Plaza is for years, they've been here about as long as you've been practicing law, 30 years.
Yep.
And with that, you've got people that have had their parents, maybe themselves, their grandparents, right here at this facility, still very new, but you've got that tradition of care. Does that go a long way?
Well, yeah, and sometimes you got to dig in just a little bit to find out if that's the right place for you. And that goes back to that question you had on, can you trust the folks here?
Right.
A suggestion is, again, spend some time. Maybe come back a couple, 3 times. Talk to people, have lunch, see what's going on. And then find out a little bit about the staff. What I've found is it's going to be hard for you to go to the staff and say, is this the right place for me? They'll tell you. But if you notice that the staff has been here for a while, if they're taking care of their people, there's something going on right in that situation, something that you can count on. If the staff is pleasant, if they're happy working here, it means that something's going right, and you're going to benefit from that. If you move into a place and they can't keep staff and that's a changeover and, there's just all the changes that keep happening, it's really hard to develop a lot of trust. So the fact that you've got a situation that's been here for 30 plus years, you can feel it when you come in. You can see the people are happy to be here. I think you can rely on that. That's going to help a lot.
How does one declutter?
Oh, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Are you a living example of someone that's clutter-free, or are you a hoarder?
I'm probably pushing more towards clutter-free, but everybody's got some stuff. Now, if you've been in the same house for 50 years, that's the family homestead, and you've been in that house for 50 years, you know that you've accumulated a lot of stuff. My folks did something that was really interesting. When Dad retired, they chose to do a mission service for the LDS Church, and they sold their house, got rid of everything that was in the house. So they kind of decluttered all at one time. Went out, spent almost 2 years in a little country called Estonia, right up on the northern Russian border, not far from...
Now, how old were they when they did this?
Dad had just retired, so they were in their mid-60s.
Sure.
And
Why not go on a mission?
Yeah. Well, when they came back, they'd left some stuff in a storage unit, and they were near tears at all the stuff they thought they had at that point because they'd lived in a small country where people were very poor. So they did an excellent job from that point on keeping things down to a bare minimum, which was extremely helpful. I don't know that they liked doing it so much, but we kids were very much, a great fan of what they did because they kept it down, kept it small, kept it down to the, to the brass tacks.
That was great for you and the kids.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's talk about the 5 steps to get organized and to take care of your family, to take care of you. I like the step 1, get real.
Yeah, well, we don't like to anticipate those things in our life, like being incapacitated or even having some cognitive decline. And we certainly don't want to talk about death too soon. But part of getting real is to understand those are facts of life. And if you can embrace it, then you can come up with a better plan than the one you get by default. So you got the 2 plans. By default, it's the government plan, or you can get the plan by design, and that's the one where you step in and determine who's going to do what and when, and help you to, maximize your independence, your freedom. But you can only do that if you get real.
Right. Who has the biggest challenge getting real? Let's say mom, dad, uncle, aunt, or the kids, based on your experience.
It's a mix. We do a little thing with our clients after they've put together an estate plan. We call it the family meeting. We like to bring the family in, walk them through the fact that we've put together a plan. Here's the will or the trust, and here's what it does, and here's who's going to be in charge, and here's the power of attorney, healthcare power. So we walk through that. Incredibly often, kids don't want to talk about it. In fact, I was with a couple this morning. We were finishing up their plan, and the kids just kept saying, so, Mom, does this mean you guys are dying? Are you guys dying because you put together this plan? And the short answer was, well, yeah, we're all dying at a particular rate.
Sure.
But it wasn't accelerated here. They planned, they were actually quite young, they're not going to die for a long time. They just wanted to make sure that the kids were taken care of. So often the biggest obstacle is the kids, and this is who we're doing it for very often. So the kids can be a real pain. That can be very difficult for them to, think through that and wonder what life's going to be like.
Well, it's easy to focus on other things. It's easy to focus on your own life.
Oh, yeah.
And figure out, mom, dad, or whoever will just kind of continue on. Psychologically, you go from, this authority figure for your whole life, then all of a sudden the roles reverse.
Yeah. We should come back to that before we finish today, because that's another great argument for coming to a place like, Garden Plaza. Because as kids, we want to be the kids. We want mom to always be mom.
Heck
we want dad to always be dad.
Nobody wants to be the parent.
Yeah. Well,
except when you're a kid.
Yeah. We'll talk about that maybe in a little bit.
Sure.
So who has the biggest challenge? Well, like I said, the kids are difficult. Men seem to really struggle with this, and I'm not exactly sure what's in our, chromosome that just makes this difficult for us.
Well, it's acknowledging our own mortality, not morality. That's but for some other men. But anyway,
that's another time.
Exactly.
So I know that, and so it just seems like moms and grandmas can face that a little bit easier than dads and grandpas. Not sure why, but I think that'll follow.
All right. Well, we have a lot to talk about in our last segment. I know you're fired up about that. Mark White joining us from Idaho Estate Planning, idahoestateplanning.com. His number, 939-7658. We are here at Garden Plaza of Valley View. Welcome home every Saturday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We're here to welcome you home. If you have a question, call Garden Plaza now, 322-0311. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO Talk Radio on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Welcome home, our show every Saturday afternoon on, from Garden Plaza of Valley View. Mark White joining us, attorney at law, Idaho Estate Planning. So we've left a lot for you in the last segment of this program when we're talking about getting real. Well, yeah, and a couple of things that I urge everybody to think about is if we can get real. And again, I don't imagine that's easy, but if we can get real, then
you have to deal with this all the time, though.
Oh yeah, right? Yeah. So I get a little tough on people sometimes, but I advocate a lot for the kids or the grandkids or for the other spouse. We got to do this. This needs to happen. And one of the things that people they don't really appreciate this, and let's say that mom and dad are getting a little older. Maybe they're not doing a good job of preparing their meals. Maybe they're not eating as well as they should. Well, that's one of the benefits of coming to a place like Garden Plaza of Valley View.
I'm glad you made that mistake, Mark, because I get confused as well, and that's a big point. The idea of maybe you see something slipping, and we never want to acknowledge that our role model, our hero, our parents are not perfect.
No, but if we don't pay attention to that, and if we don't have a plan for that, then we become caregivers, and that is a completely different role. It is way more emotionally taxing and physically taxing to become the caregiver for our parents than to be the kids and to maintain that relationship.
Well, and we seem to forget that, and we've learned that in our past couple shows. I'm glad you brought that up. The toll it takes, not only on the caregiver, but the relationship with mom or dad if you're over there all the time. For many years we're taught, well, you just buck it up and go.
Yeah.
But we forget about the emotional cost.
It's huge, and I think you'll find if you dig in, do a little bit of research on this, the cost to the society, the cost in the United States to just taking care of those that have cognitive issues, say Alzheimer's dementia, is huge. Because if you're the caregiver, or if you as the kids decide we're going to be the caregivers, well, someone's going to give up a full-time job, because being the caregiver is not a part-time thing. And if you become the caregiver, then you're no longer doing something else. And so you're saying, well, it's not costing us any money. Well, yeah, it is. But it's also costing emotionally, physically, mentally. That it's all taxing. And so if you want to maintain those relationships, then you really do have to get real about the possibility and then plan for it. And that's what that Paul Orlando was trying to tell us last week is you got to dig in, you got to plan. Financially, medically, you need to make that plan. I've seen many, many situations where going to a independent living, like we have here at Valley View, really delayed needing to go into assisted living or even skilled nursing because their nutrition got better. They ate better. They were more cognitively involved.
Well, and to your point, there's something about socialization.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it keeps the mind going, and it keeps, it keeps you engaged. And that isolation, that is the worst thing for those cognitive issues such as Alzheimer's. If we're pulling back and we're pulling out of society. And here, the benefit of being in a place like this, you don't have to like everybody, but you're going to find somebody that you like or somebody that you don't mind, spending a few minutes with. And you're going to get pulled out into these activities, which you're not going to do at home. I had a gal, she was a neighbor, and she was going to stay home at all costs, and she got a big screen TV and put her rocker right in front of the big screen TV. That's what she did all day. That's what she did every day. When, in fact, if she had moved into,
Garden Plaza, Valley View, or a place like that,
yeah. She'd have been pulled into conversations. She would have been able to brag about her kids, her grandkids, her great-grandkids, and she'd been able to, relate to so many other people. That isolation would not have been an issue. But she was so stubborn about, I'm going to stay at home. I think she passed sooner than she would have if she'd been more, socially involved, more activities.
Sure. What about protecting your clients? Obviously, that's so very important. And again, that trust you establish with people. We had Paul on last week, how to find a good financial planner.
Right.
How do you find a good attorney who is going to put, that responsibility, to the client above their own?
Well, what you're gonna find is that when you go looking for an attorney, and when you do both estate planning or elder law, you're going to be put in a situation where you're going to have to decide who's going to be your fiduciaries. And so if you're visiting with an attorney, I think experience is very helpful. You can go out and get all kinds of different letters behind your name, but when it comes down to it, visiting with somebody who's kind of been around the block or seen a few things, I think you're going to find that very helpful because I haven't seen everything, but I've seen a lot of things. And I deal with a lot of attorneys that have been in the business longer than I have. We've just seen a lot of stuff. And so when you need to make a decision about this child or this child, we can sit down and ask, well, what kind of skill set do they have? Emotionally, are they able to do this? If they can't do it emotionally, then don't put them in that situation because you're going to regret that and they're going to regret that. So talking through that, you're going to need more counseling really than straight up legal work. And so when you're talking to attorneys, that's something you might want to find out is, what kind of bedside manner do they have?
Sure.
Are they able to talk to you about this? Are they able to explain it in English? That's always good.
It is for those that speak English. However, and we have other people that, bilingual, trilingual, what have you. Our world is changing. I don't know where that came from, but we'll continue on. Let's take a look at any advice you could give people right now on when it's time to have these tough discussions. We've talked a little bit about it. Hey, mom this, mom that, but anything in particular, a one warning sign? We live in such a transitional society today that people, are living like your mom's in Utah, but you have people that live east of the Great River or maybe on, parts of the West Coast, and their parents or mom or dad are still here.
Well, there's a couple of things that I would keep an eye on. Certainly we're all concerned, and it's a devastating diagnosis to find out that we're dealing with dementia or any other cognitive issue. Physical issues are difficult as well. as soon as we have some concerns about that, is a good time to maybe, pull the kids in and start having a conversation. And I know nobody really wants to do that,
Right.
but we need to do that. If you start to see mom or dad cognitively struggling to put a sentence together or remembering who you are,
Sure.
it's one thing to have. I mean, as you get older, I call it the two-door rule. I'm usually good if I pass through one door to remember what it was I went to get. But there's no guarantee after the second doorway.
Right.
If I go through two doorways, I'm calling my wife. What was it I was getting? My dad, in fact, used to tell Mom as he stood up, I'm going to the kitchen to get a Pepsi. And then he'd get to the kitchen and he'd go, Dear, why did I come in here? And she could tell him.
Well, it's always good to have that person. Mark, finally, how can people get your book?
Hey, listen, if they go on our website, and that's idahoestateplanning.com, there's a place where you can sign up, and we'll send you a copy. It won't cost you anything.
The most important information you can give someone today, this afternoon? We've covered a lot, young man.
Yeah, we really have. I think
How to drum,
how
how to be a member of the Old Man Band.
Well, the best advice you could probably ever get is to keep singing. Keep the
That's
music
if you
going.
can carry a tune.
Meh. Then play the music and listen to it. They've done a lot of studies with folks dealing with Alzheimer's dementia. Mm-hmm. And if they play the music from a particular era in their life, the memory is still there. They can sing the lyrics to those songs. They can dance to them.
That's amazing.
It's a whole different person. So I'd say, keep singing, keep playing, keep dancing.
Keep dancing. Keep playing. The Old Man Band, our great friend Mark White joining us, 939-7658, idahoestateplanning.com. You're listening to Welcome Home from Garden Plaza of Valley View. Kevin Miller with you on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio.